In a previous video, we looked at how to modify the layout of a page within an object. So we looked at rearranging fields, we talked about the various sections within subpages, and we looked at how to set up and modify access to subpages themselves. What I did not cover in that one was looking at the tabs across the top. Even though I hinted that I was going to, I ran out of time. So, separate video to cover tabs. The tab layout is not controlled in the same place as the rest of the material we looked at in the previous video. So if you go into administration objects and you go to the project object and you try and figure out where these tabs are defined, you're not going to find it. The reason is that this is actually a portlet page, and all of these individual pieces are basically built in out of the box portlets that you can't modify, um, but you can control. So under administration, instead of going to objects, I want to go to portlet pages. Now, before I do that, I can look on a given project under the admin settings page, assuming you have access to it. Not everybody does. And on this page, I can see the dashboard view. This drop-down menu is specifying the layout of this page. So right now it's set to AZ PGB project layout. Or, yeah, sorry, project layout. So if I go to the administration module and I go to portlet pages, I can see AZ PGB project layout. If I drill into this, this is a layout definition. And the layout definition is selectable. As we just saw, I can pick a different one to get a different layout. So what we have done here is we've actually defined for AstraZeneca a layout that has a particular tab configuration. And that's what this page definition is for. So we have a name, an ID, leave the content source alone. The default tab layout is the structure of a new tab if you allow people to create new ones. And that's a checkbox right there. So in our case, we've said, yeah, you can create your own tab. If I'm on my project, I can personalize it and create new tabs, which I don't have a link for on this tab, but I do if I were to go to the dashboard tab. I could see a personalize and manage my tabs, and I could create a new one. So this screen is fairly straightforward. The link parameters let you define information that's useful if you're writing a portlet that's going to jump to a particular tab. You can create a link and use that in the portlet, but I'm not going to cover that here. The ones of interest are these next two. So the tabs tab is where you define the tabs that are displayed in this layout. So you can see I've got properties, team, tasks, financial plans. All of these correspond to the tabs that I see across the top here. All of these are active. There are a couple that are not active, and therefore we don't see them. If I wanted to make the financial dashboard tab active, all I got to do is check that, click save, and if I go back to my project and I refresh the screen, then at the end, in addition to PGB, I see financial dashboard. So I can define tabs, and I can create a new tab. I can choose whether or not those tabs are displayed in a given layout. I can also reorder them. So right now I've got this particular sequence, which corresponds to what we see on the project. But if I wanted to, I could rearrange them. I could put hierarchy in front of chargebacks. And as soon as I save and return, I go here, I've got chargebacks, then hierarchy, but if I refresh, the change that I just made is reflected. So I can change the order of these tabs. I can also choose whether or not to display certain tabs. For instance, we don't use chargebacks, so I have no idea why this is still sitting here. So in my tabs page, I could go to chargebacks and say, don't care, don't want to use those. So I can turn that one off. On the other hand, the financial dashboard looks like it might be interesting. So I've just turned it on. I'm going to leave it there. and see what happens. The collaboration tab is actually potentially useful, but we've never used it. It contains a document manager so that you can associate documents with a project. It might be worth exploring whether there is appetite for putting project artifacts, schedules, meeting notes, whatever, directly into Clarity. So the collaboration tab gives you access to a project level knowledge store, basically, document manager. It also gives you access to a calendar, which is kind of useless given that everybody uses Outlook, and a threaded discussion group, which may or may not be useful. But the document manager thing might be worth taking a look at. So I'm just going to turn that one on as well. I'm going to turn off chargebacks, and I'm going to save that. And now I'm going to go back here and refresh. And things look considerably different. I didn't think I reduced all of those. What did I do here? All I turned off was chargebacks and turned on a couple others, and I lost a bunch of tabs. So not quite sure what I did with that. Let me go back and undo that. Put that one back, turn these guys off, save it, and refresh. So that is rather weird. Interesting. All right, I think I may want to reorder things before I try and do any of that. I don't know which of those actions caused that. If I just turn off the chargebacks and save it and refresh, that worked as I would have expected. And now I'm going to turn on financial dashboards. And I'm going to save that. And refresh. And that worked. And now I'm going to turn that one on and save it. And refresh. And now it's behaving properly. So I don't know what just happened. Obviously, the advice is make the changes carefully. So now I can look in my collaboration tab, and I can see that I've got basically a document manager. And I've also got action items and discussions. So don't have the calendar, probably turned that off somewhere else in the system, but I can go into discussions and start a threaded discussion group, or I can share documents for this project. Now that also brings up a whole nother raft of complexity, because collaboration and being able to add things and being able to see them has its own set of rights. There are collaboration managers and project participants, so it does get a little complex, but it may be worth looking into at some point. But in any event, eliminating chargebacks from this list of tabs is probably a good idea because we don't use them. We'll leave the collaboration off for now until that gets more investigation. And I'm not sure what the financial dashboard is going to show me. I have no idea what's on that page, but it could be interesting. And it'll probably take a while to draw. And it'll probably be boring because I don't think there's any financial data for this project. So again, it's a portlet page like any other. You can configure it, you can choose which portlets to display on this, but it happens to be a system defined one. So I could go to administration, portlet pages, and look for financial dashboard and reconstruct the layout or modify it however I wish. So I think that's pretty much what I needed to say. I want to make sure you understand how to modify these tabs, and that also will explain why in some cases you look at a project and the tab layout looks different than it does in others, because the project itself has a different associated, did I say that right? project layout. So if I go back to the admin settings, the dashboard view or layout may be different. So if I pick a different one like project default layout and say save, now I will get a different set of tabs because there's my collaboration tab that I just removed from the other layout. My recommendation is you may want to do some investigation. I suspect that we've got a hodgepodge of existing layouts. They're probably not all the same. And sometime when someone's bored, it may be a worthwhile exercise to add the dashboard view attribute to the project list page and look at all the projects and see how many different layouts we're using, decide on one as a standard, and implement that and update all the projects accordingly. But in the meantime, now you understand how those tab settings are done and where to find them. And that means, well, you know.